What's up, everyone? And welcome to another special edition. I'm talking the last round of Launchtoberfest 2022. Where, yes, we're in conjunction with the I Don't Know Shit About Comics podcast, Apollo City Comics podcast, and lesser known comics, where we are bringing you creators that have Kickstarter launches all month long in the month of October. And for the final battle, the final round, we bring in the head of the snake himself, Mr. Mark Bernal. Brother, how are you?
Fantastic. I had to dance to the music. I had to outdo what I saw Doug's dance moves.
Doug can shake it. The boy's got a lot of jelly in that jam. How are things, man? Tell us, if you can, tell us about your trip. I know you recently took a trip overseas, so
yeah, I went to Norway, and yeah, anytime I travel, I get a lot of ideas about what kind of stories I want to write. When I went to Alaska, I ended up coming home and was like, oh, we're going to do something with Wendigos, because when I was in Alaska, there were some weird noises in the, like the wind howls through the trees and makes some spooky sounds. And in Norway was those crazy fjords, like those like huge cliffs, and I don't know, the idea of giant troll kaijus or something like that sounds really cool to me. We do have a troll in a book that's under production right now, or in production right now. But I was like, oh, maybe we can build this out a little bit more. Like give this troll an origin place. Maybe it can be Scandinavia.
So I take it was it can be, those kind of trips can be pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I think anytime you see like new architecture and new, cultures and stuff like that. I'm used to going to a lot of places like South America and the Philippines, China, and stuff like that. So it was weird to go to a place that was like just like kind of quieter. There's like nobody in Oslo. There's like 300,000 people in that capital. There's like nobody there.
I'm
Yeah.
curious. I'm curious how the travel was like. I guess semi post COVID. I don't know how you feel about that, but I mean, like, how was travel? Was it like masked up still, or was it a little lax, or how was that for
It
you?
was it was definitely lax. I had like a weird sinus thing, so I had my mask on just because I was the one coughing and being kind of gross. Um, yeah, I was pretty sure it was COVID, at one point, but I kept taking the test. Nope. But yeah, just weird sinus stuff. Probably because I was wearing sandals in like Norway at the wrong month. I don't like own regular shoes. Uh, but no, it was cool, and man, like a country that like China's infrastructure is really good. Like you can get anywhere on their like metro super easy. And everything like works off your phone. It was really easy there, but like Norway, very similar, where it's just like you get off the plane and like you're not even exit really the terminal yet, and like the metro is right there to get you onto like into downtown Oslo. It's just super super easy. Like
Wow,
everything was,
so it's a little more like streamlined.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, it
I
seems like
mean,
it's crazy that they could take away the clusterfuck that like most airports seem to be.
yeah, we were with somebody who was kind of like trashing on the US, and she was like, blah blah, if only New York was this way. And I was like, well, like New York's got like 9 million more people, so you like that'll gum up the works pretty quick. Just
Oh,
add people and things get worse,
yeah,
you
for
know.
sure. So let's talk about the reason why we're here. The big elephant in the room. You're putting out your first full length book, Either Them or Us. Can you give us a non-spoilery version of this?
Yeah. The fun way of saying it is that Franco was like, "Hey, I've been working on your characters for long enough, and I want to do more stuff with like samurais and stuff in Japan." So this is actually part of the story arc we hadn't intended on getting to, but Franco, he makes up his own rules. So uh, he told me, "Hey, let's do something in East Asia." So we had a backstory, based on some of the characters that were in lesser known comics number 3. So we just started building out the story for that, and it's a 150 plus year feud between a line of samurais and a coven of witches, that's intergenerational, so um, we allude to it a little bit in lesser known comics number 3. So we have the witches here showing up to talk to Danny, and they're trying to hide something from someone. And what you find out in Either Them or Us, which is the comic that we just went live on Kickstarter with, is they're part of this witch coven from Japan, and there's a whole line of samurais that they've had a beef with, and it's been this game of cat and mouse, and you get to see kind of the origins of that, and then in the 1860s, and then it fast forwards to the 1980s in a fictional city called Kaijo City in Japan, where you got grappling hooks and helicopters and katanas and all sorts of stuff. Tried to stay out of Franco's way so we could do some action scenes, some character development. Hey, the samurais have got to have this super badass chick that's the only chick in this whole group of samurai mercenaries, in modern times. Like, what is she going to look like, and what is she going to be able to do? And the dude just like hit it out of the park. And it's got a lot of themes of just that intergenerational conflict where you just like, people have been fighting with each other for so long, that they're not even, they're carrying on a grudge of their ancestors. They're not even necessarily have a particular grudge with the people that they're contemporaries. They're just years and years of fighting.
It seems like there is many layers to this onion. Has this story been around for a while, or was it just something that was like kind of cooked up and just done, or was it a bit of a process?
We had the characters for a while. So um, some of the main characters in other story arcs are secondary characters in this story arc, and we have 2 primary anti-heroes. And not to spoil it, but one will be dead by the time you get to some of the other LKC books, and the other one will either be a villain or a hero in some of those follow-on books. But it's definitely something that, as I built out the canon and the lore of who all these people are in the lesser known universe, it's cool to take a secondary character and like build out a whole world for them. But we have a lot of plans for it. So the second issue is pretty much illustrated. We just have to kind of figure out how much or how little we want and where we want to jump around in time. Franco's done a ton of work already. So it's just a matter of figuring out, exactly how we want to present this story. Like, is it cool to jump around in time so much, or is it going to be exhausting for the reader? And how do we want to actually, do this narratively? But we do have the whole story pretty much charted out.
So it's samurais and witches, obviously, and you had spoke to it a little earlier with Franco suggesting some of this. How did this instantly click with you, or was this a little bit of hesitation, or did this draw on from any other inspiration?
Uh, with most of the stuff I work with the illustrators, if I can tell that they're like excited about stuff, you can tell like when you talk to them, you can tell like at this pace that they're getting you concept art, and like Franco just wanted to draw more of these henchmen that he's been doing. So when we take it to 1980s, a lot of those samurais, they're using modern technology and they got, helicopters and they got, like I said, like giant grappling hook guns and, real weapons and stuff like that. And that stuff that he was coming up with, he was just really excited about it. And what's great about him is that, um, I've given him a lot of creative freedom before, on projects, and he's hit it out of the park. And in this one, he's actually, changed the ending of the book. He didn't, he didn't like really tell me, but like he's so competent of a visual storyteller that, he knows that like if he has an idea and he executes it, like that I'm going to love it. So he actually came back and he's like, the ending's a little different. And I was like, okay, like let's see it. And he's like, it's better this way. And I read it. I was like, yeah, it is better this way. It's a lot better. So,
Was that an
uh,
instant choice for you in it being better, or did it take a little bit of time to soak in?
it wasn't so much that he changed the trajectory of the story, but that he decided that let's not reveal this portion of the story yet. Instead, let's stay on these characters and do an extra scene with them instead of switching characters and showing this scene that you had originally chose to show. Um, which I think, regardless of if one's better than the other, at the end of the day, like the art's going to carry the story. So if the illustrator's excited, you know, he's just making these panels that he's just stoked with, and he's crushing it and crushing it and crushing it. He's like, nope, staying on this scene because I'm cooking with gas over here, you know. Okay.
It's hard not to listen to the chef, and it almost kind of gives you a little bit more padding for the next issue
Yeah,
because
I think so.
you leave that reveal alone, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and what's nice too is bringing in additional writers um, for the following issues as well. So one of the writers will actually be Brandon Blocksdorf from Apollo City, who's helping me out. So he was helping me out with future issues of Death Wish, and he's also helping me out with future issues of Either Them or Us.
Nice.
And same thing. He's just one of those guys that you can kind of just be like, yeah, I want to do something like this, and he'll riff with it, and you're just like, okay, you got some fun things planned. Okay.
So, how did you land on Franco? And I don't have the colorist's name, but how did you land on the artist and colorist? Because looking through some of the promotional material, the the color stands out like crazy. Like it's it's very, I don't know, congruent, and it's what caught me at first, and then obviously the art as well. But how did you land on these guys?
So I've only talked to the colorist like a handful of times on social media, never even on voice. He works with Franco a lot because I think he's down there in Argentina as well. So his name's Nick Torres, um, and um, Franco, he can do color, but he knows what he likes to do, and he likes to do, pencils and inks, and so he's the one who actually came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, I'm not coloring this stuff myself. I'm gonna get this other guy to do it." And I actually only interact with Franco, so all the money that goes for illustration goes to him, and however he wants to subcontract down to a colorist is kind of on him. But yeah, Nick is phenomenal. He's done everything amazingly well. I noticed a couple of things in terms of um, Franco's style. It has slightly changed. So his blacks are very like clear and crisp, in LKC number 3. But then if you see what he did with Goodnight, it's a lot more textured. He uses this ton of more texture. And now that's a black and white book, but this new book, this next story he did, this is Goodnight, for anyone who hasn't seen. But he kind of applies some of that texture that he used in Goodnight. So it's almost a merging of the two styles. And it was just really cool to watch Nick kind of like roll with that, and almost like he still like colors very similar to how he always has, but he definitely like helped, like, I think Franco lean into that style. So I'm very happy with, how it's come out.
They definitely complement each other very heavily.
And I got to see some interesting color variations as well when we were going through the editing phase. And these are the parts that I love with like making comics. It's like, the skin has been torn from this person's face. So this panel right here is like, it's already rotting and decayed. Like, how rotting and decayed should it be, and how should the color and I just love that is a conversation. Like, it's one of those things, my wife will hear, she'll be like, you're just talking about like, mangled faces, for 30 minutes. So it was it's a great conversation. It was very important.
Cathartic. Your Kickstarter launched today. How are you feeling? How's your stress level?
I think this one is easier because it's my book. Chiasm we did, and Yuriko just closed. There was a lot of pressure, that I just didn't want to disappoint those guys. I tried to put together a program in a process so that I can confidently say, hey, if we do X, Y, and Z, your book's going to fund. It's going to fund in 72 hours, and then here's our kind of glide path to get you, to ramp those numbers up over the remainder of the Kickstarter. And then you just hope you're not full of shit, and I think both of them, those campaigns did what they needed to do. I think Yuriko did better than Chiasm, not at any fault to Chiasm. We learned so much from, because working with Doug was an absolute pleasure, where me and Doug talked about, hey, let's do this and this and this. We're going to do the campaign a certain way so that the data that we get from this campaign will be able to enrich further campaigns, that we can take those lessons and really like make them like a 1-for-1, not an apples and orange comparison. And I think the success of Chiasm really played into Yuriko being, extremely successful in my opinion. I think it did 400% of its target when all said and done. And David did a tremendous amount of work too. But the nice part is, like, if it's a little disappointed, or it goes better than I expected, it's only me that has to, like, I don't have to take any bad news to anyone. And I guess, so that's a good part. And then if it's me, then like I get to put a feather in my cap and be like, hey, my book did better than I thought it would,
Yeah.
So it's like, it's almost like good news either way.
Well,
But I'm still refreshing.
You're almost developing a method for success. Not in a say of like, oh my gosh, it works every time. But your track record kind of proves itself when you look from like batch 1 to batch 2 to batch 3 and 4, and then from Chiasm now and Yuriko, and then possibly what you're going to do, like, or what you will do, excuse me. Like, you seem to be setting up a method for success in a sense of developing the skeleton to create this. Saying Doug's was instrumental, was that the beginning of that process, or was that also developing before Doug?
So Doug was the first one where we released like one book, like it wasn't a batch. with the exception of Digital Lizards of Doom, but no rules apply to Digital Lizards of Doom. It's such a unique thing. Um, but we did batch 2 and batch 3 and batch 4, and I just had that feeling that not that I had a conversation with Ray Garza at the end of batch 4. And Ray's such a wonderful and empathetic human being. He was stoked. He was like, "Hey, like this campaign funded it, and last time I tried with Tank, it didn't fund, and so he's happy." And I said, well, "I'm glad you feel that way. I also feel like I didn't give Tank McGregor enough of a spotlight to shine on its own, because it was a batch 4 campaign, and it's such a strong book. It's a great graphic novel, you know." They said, and me and him had a lot of conversations about, should we switch to one book at a time, and then him and Doug get along really well. So Doug being the campaign that came right after, like that conversation was kind of just going around the bullpen. We were like, yeah, let's focus on one book at a time. They'll be slower to release, which is, a little frustrating, but like we can focus on one creator, spotlight one creator. I think we'll get better data off of it. It'll dramatically lower the cost of what it takes to run an individual campaign. So not only are these campaigns doing better since Kaya's and Yuriko and now either them or us, but the overhead of what it costs to market them has also dropped significantly. Because I think it's just easier to say like, "Hey, you're buying one book," right, rather than a batch of stuff, and I do have a buddy who he's starting to do Kickstarters in a batch. Shout out to Mad Cloud Comics; they're great guys. So he's actually was doing individual books, and now he's doing a batch. So we'll probably compare notes to see, was it that batches are better or worse, or is Mark just better or worse at doing batches versus individual? So I think there's many ways to success, just a matter of finding which one fits, the individual and the team.
What are your pricing tiers for this Kickstarter? Can you at least, maybe like tell it, if you don't know all of them, can you at least tell us like what the basic price is for just the book?
Yeah, so it's $5 for a digital, and it's $10 for the physical book. We pretty much do the cost based on it's roughly double of what it costs for print, and so the physical version is $10, and then we have a variant cover by a guy by the name Reese Jenkins, and he did this bananas cover. It's like way different style. It's kind of that urban manga, kind of like Boondocks,
Okay.
style.
Yeah.
It's unreal. And it started out as just like fan art. He's like, "Hey, I got something I'm going to show you." And I was like, "Can this be our variant cover?" He's like, "What?" And I was like, "What?" So, um, so that variant cover, we decided we were only going to make 25 available for the campaign. So that one, we put a little bit of a premium on it at $20 for that variant cover. So those will be signed and numbered and stuff like that. And then we have some other tiers where you can add on other books in the LKC universe, or the entire LKC catalog, which is nice because I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, "Oh, I missed out on Yuriko." You can add it on to them or us, no
Well,
problem. Easy peasy.
that should be basically the social clip here. So, guys, if you're missed some Kickstarters from our wonderful people at Launchtoberfest 2022, add it on to this next one, babes. Don't even worry about that candy this Halloween and just buy comic books. You won't rot your teeth.
Yeah.
When can we expect an issue 2 of either them or us?
That's a good question. I'm So in terms of if we went pedal to metal, we could go in the first quarter of next year of 2023. Um, I am going to take a little bit of time in December to just like do a little bit of comics detox.
Yeah.
Um, and we have a lot of planning to do because um, there's the second issue of either them or us. I got to get on the calendar, but second issue of Yuriko. Uh, David's got Narita, which is another book. We got the second Tank McGregor and the Cosmic Colossus. Like I've seen pages of it, and it's bananas. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good. Doug's got more chiasm, and like you start counting it up, Tights issue 3 and stuff like that. And we're like, oh man, we got
There's a
got a lot
lot.
of books, and we got to figure out how to make because right now the schedule operates on the lesser known comics release schedule operates on the official dibs system. You just call dibs. I think David called dibs on February, but that's the only official release date is that we're going to get a Narita comic book in February, I think. you know, Yuriko 2, he did. I know it's coming out in 2023, but he has not yet called dibs on a month. Um, so,
Let's
um,
putting that out there for everybody for everybody to hear. Call
yeah, I
dibs
got
on
it.
your month.
Yeah, we got another Death Wish comic coming out too. So, and then we got the anthology, that punk rock anthology that's coming out. That crap, and then we also have Indie Comics House Party, which we're going to be doing some more. But that is going to be an anthology that has, I think, about 50 indie comic creators um, doing small little cameos of each other's comics and like one to 2 page crossovers. So you'll see, you know, um, Bigfoot Knows Karate maybe, and Tank McGregor, and um, uh, stuff from other publishers, like Sovereign Comics and Snowy Works and stuff like that, and it'll be it's almost just like a clubhouse where we're just gonna like do a bunch of wacky shit. But it's a big project, and but it's coming out in 2023 as well.
Sounds like a lot of messes might be made in this clubhouse. I might know somebody who can clean up that mess. Anyway,
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait, man.
moving on down the line, how do you get into writing mode? Like, is there like, how do you set the mood? Do you just go away from everybody? You kick the kids out? Like, what do you do for that?
This is gonna sound weird, but I do most of the writing in the car, and it's not the most efficient way because I have to. I turn on a playlist. I make a playlist for the out or the comic that I'm trying to write. Um, so right now I'm working on a comic with my buddy Dave Law. It's still in scripting phase, and so I have a playlist that says David Mark actually make a comic finally, and like it's got songs in it, and just driving and listening and listening and listening, and then all of a sudden something hits me, and I pull over and I'll type in a bunch of things into my notepad on my phone, or jot a couple things down when I'm stuck at a red light. But I kind of imagine those songs as a soundtrack, you know, um, and start to set the scenes that I want. But 90% of it is just sitting and thinking, and then 10% is just putting on paper. At least that's how it's been working for me.
All right,
And my scripts are
we've
it,
talked
it
about that before.
yeah, they probably don't look like a lot of other people's scripts. It looks like the ramblings of a crazy person.
No, man. I was talking to this about Brandon Ingram like last night. Warts and all, like warts make something unique. It gives it that little bit of like I can either get into it or it kind of draws you to it. So like having the warts and all, that's what it's about. Talk to me about how your last Kickstarter went. Have the have you been seeing a trend as far as just going onward and upward?
Um, yeah, I mean, in terms of the lesser known comics ones, there's a couple metrics. We try not to follow the actual funding totals. And we had a conversation, actually, me and Ray Garza, the creator Tank McGregor, we said, well, what should we care about? And we said new backers and returning backers. Like as long as those numbers go in the right direction, then we should be happy. So are we seeing um, both of those steadily increase? They don't have to increase by big numbers. If you had 10 returning backers in the last campaign, do you see, even if you saw 11 or 12, right, that's trending in the right direction. And then new backers, because at the end of the day, we want to keep making books and we want new people to read them. And we want the people who read them to like them so much that they come back and want to read another. And because the funding totals can change for so many reasons, there could be a lot of kick-ass campaigns this month, and there's a lot of kick-ass campaigns in the month of October right now. So somebody, instead of maybe getting all the bells and whistles this month, they say, well, I also have to back Bigfoot Knows Karate #2, and I have to back Dismay Comics, their anthology, and they have to back Homebrew Comics. Those are 3 shout outs right there, because those are awesome campaigns that are going right now. So they got to split their money. So you can get wrapped around the axle about how much funds you brought in, but whether it's somebody just getting a digital tier at $5 or they're getting whatever, they're giving something because they give a shit about your comics. So, that's a big, that says something, and shouldn't discredit, somebody's commitment to the campaign, just because, the dollar amount.
Is there someone out there that has a Kickstarter out that you're interested in, but they might be a little underrated or maybe not as known, like someone like Dan Price, or is there somebody out there who you're interested in that's kind of off the radar?
Well, Dan Price crushes it on Kickstarter, so he's blowing my book out of the water. So, uh, in terms of underrated, um, yeah, I'll give 2 examples. So, uh, Sasquatch Viking by Tardigrade Press. That one's going. That book should have that book is awesome. So that's going right now, and that should be doing. It, I wish people saw that book the way I see it, because it's awesome, and I think it's just a matter of um, we have lucked out that we have a really good social media following. So that book is actually doing good on Kickstarter. Um, um, but I think like maybe if it was on the LKC platform or something like that, like we get a lot of attention sometimes, and good or bad, that's what it is. Um, uh, but our my buddy Renee, he actually just canceled his book, or he canceled his Kickstarter. But I got to show off his work. Um, so his did not fund, and I think it's just a matter of um, like knowing how to use that algorithm, because here's his first book and it's absolutely insane. I gotta find one of the full page spreads. um, but Rene Ariola, his books are called The Realm Ethereal,
Wow.
and it's just crazy, and just goes to show that if it's just a matter of, well, you got to do the book, and even if you do the book, you got to figure out to play the game of Kickstarter and social media in order for the right eyes to see it. Because if the same amount of eyes saw his book as saw Yuriko, those numbers would have looked very similar. Because Yuriko's kick-ass art, kick-ass story. This is kick-ass art, kick-ass story. Same thing with Tardigrade Press and their stuff. And Dan's got it down. Dan, yeah, that big like 6 hour launch party. I think there's a lot to be learned from doing those kind of things. Because he funded, I think, in 30 minutes or something, something like that.
That's nuts. Would you
Yeah.
consider playing the game basically the biggest part of success as far as Kickstarter goes? Like playing the game is like Instagram and doing the social media stuff, and is that the
I,
biggest contributing factor?
I think the biggest contributing factor is um, just continuing, because there's always going to be setbacks. So whether it's your first release or your third release, you know, that kind of takes a flop in your consideration, right? Just being able to say, this is only a moment in time. I'm going to learn what I can from the situation and go past it. And then being surrounded by people who like rally when there's a setback, and I've been in situations where I've been surrounded by people who don't rally when there's a setback. They point fingers when there's a setback. And that'll wear you out so freaking quick, and I talk about Doug a lot. I completely I think I've said before that working with him is like a masterclass in positivity, and he's super positive, and it'll kick you in the ass when you're like, hey, yes, things are tough right now, but the problem is your attitude. He'll be the first person to tell you that, and I think I came out of this year, really understanding that being near people like that, that's what's going to change everything for you, not, the success of, one particular, tactic or something that you adjust. Because that'll come, that'll always come a time, I got enough friends who are professional musicians who were terrible at their instruments when I knew them, and they're still playing and they're crushing it now, so, they were just surrounded by people who gave them a positive kick in the ass, I guess.
So basically, it's not playing the game; it's building a good team.
Yeah, I think absolutely, because those positive team members too will also those will be the ones who will come and tell you, like Dan Price, he told me, hey, Mark, you got to do more conventions. You're not doing enough conventions, you know, and like what I mean, what does he care if lesser known comics, does well or doesn't do well, or I'm having fun or not fun as a comic, but he's a good person. So he came in and he said, hey, like here's some information that's going to unlock a lot for you. And I'm going to show you, we're going to get into conventions in a serious way together. And good people do that. Good people don't need a reason to start inspiring others.
He gave you that master class for free.
Yeah.
Are you currently writing anything? Well, I know you're writing stuff, but like, is there anything that you're writing that you're just like really excited about that maybe is, I don't know, kind of not something on that's kind of not something that would be associated with lesser known?
You're talking about like crotch cops?
Hey man, crotch cops, guys! Don't let my wife hear that because I'll be in hot water. No, I'm kidding.
For your listeners, yeah, it's a crab that lives in the pubic district that has to keep law and order in the most important place possible. No, I guess. Thank you. No, I guess in other books that we're working on, everything I'm working on is going to come out on lesser known comics.
Okay.
But there are other books that will be coming out via an anthology. So I'm working with a guy named Dave Law. We're putting a book together for an anthology that's released by Snowy Works. Future Tales of Sci-Fi is what their anthology is called. So we're actually doing kind of a sci-fi, kind of a superhero thing. Um, but it's to be released actually on Snowy Works rather than me. So I guess that is an example.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
awesome.
and then working with Kieran Quinn to do it's a one-off from Death Wish. It'll have the same characters as Death Wish, but it features the song lyrics of a band called Bad Astronaut that will be in that punk rock anthology. And I was lucky enough to get the green light from them, about a year or so ago, saying, "Yeah, you can use our lyrics in a comic book." And it was like, "Oh, awesome,"
Yeah.
you know. So and that one will be released in the Apollo City Comics punk rock anthology. Uh, we're publishing it, but like I don't have any creative control over it. That's Apollo City Comics' beast, and I'm so excited. They're just like, "Hey, we're making this badass book. Do you want to print it?" Like, yeah, absolutely.
Does when you have something like that, does that take some stress away from you, or does that add more stress because you don't want somebody to kind of like sour your name?
You know, it takes stress away, and um, there is so many there's so much opportunity out there, especially in the indie comic book scene. There's so much good advice out there that's just waiting for someone to take advantage of it. So the story behind that punk rock anthology is Brandon Blocksdorf is working on a punk rock themed comic book. And in one of the million times where I was just blah blah, talking about like, hey, wouldn't it be cool? This would be a great idea. This is a great thing. And I was like, hey, I heard this really good idea that before you release your own comic book, you should do an anthology with the same theme as your comic book. So if it's just a vampire book, you should do a vampire anthology a year before. Or if it's a sci-fi, you should do a sci-fi anthology a year before. And he's just the first person to be like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna fucking do it.
Yeah.
you know? And we talked a lot. He was taking mushrooms over at my house with the guy from I don't know shit about comics, Brian, the host, and he was just they were, and he was talking about I just finally like actually putting the announcement out, and like saying like, hey, we're gonna make this anthology and here's the plan for it. So it really wasn't that much work, you know, like it's just really just like deciding to shit or get off the pot, you know. And then people started submitting really cool stories. And now he's fucking pumped. And now he's got the energy to start working on this thing and working late hours and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff out there that like people can just take advantage of like those same types of opportunities. We're like in gold rush country for indie comics,
Yeah, it's the Wild West for sure. Um, what's your plans for 2023 for lesser known? More Kickstarters, more conventions? Will there be something new?
Yeah, we have signed on to something that Comics Wellspring is calling the Comics Unity Project. And really big news is at the end of this month, Comics Wellspring is sponsoring Artist Alley at Baltimore Comic Con. And the big thing about Baltimore Comic Con is that's where they do the Ringo Awards, which is the essentially like the Indie Eisner Awards, And so we're partnering with them. We're going to be doing a ton of conventions with them. We're going to provide opportunities for people to come submit comics, to either get, credits for publishing or printing, or to come publish with us. And so that convention is going to be a big focus of 2023. And the really cool part about Comics Wellspring is they talk to a lot of conventions because conventions are looking for corporate sponsors and whatnot. And it is so refreshing to hear them say, hey, if you're a convention, but you're not putting comics first. If this is just like a celebrity, fan grab, cash grab thing that you're doing, or it's only about Funko Pops, or it's only about movie trailers or whatever, like we want to sponsor conventions that are doing something for indie comics. And it's like, dude, thank you for like
Yeah.
being like on our side. There's no other printer. You can go to any other printer. There's no one who's like putting a vision forward and like advocating for us like that. And then they're a good freaking printer. Like I don't want to swear because they're a family-owned company. Uh, but yeah, so I'm really excited about that for 2023. So we do a ton of conventions, and there's a ton of great creators that are a part of that. Snowy Works, Sovereign Comics, Dan Price, Bigfoot Knows Karate is part of that. And so yeah, the focus I think will be the conventions, and yeah, we'll have Kickstarters going. We got a lot of books to put out, and I think the nice part is that a lot of the folks who are coming in, this will be their second and third Kickstarter. So they're, my philosophy is to kind of like work myself out of a job, right? Like I shouldn't have to run people's Kickstarters, like, Chris Wigan from Tights, this will be his third one when he gets Tights #3 out. He just came to Lesser Known Comics. So like, I don't really have to do much. I just support, I provide the megaphone, I help make it a success, but that dude is a machine. He knows what he's doing. It's really cool to see emails like David Lujan when Yuriko closed out. He sent an email to all the creators on the team because you can get other lesser known comics in the tiers in Yuriko. And he was like, "Hey guys, here's a roll up of all the books of yours that we sold through the campaign." And people were like, "Oh shit, I didn't have to lift a finger, and I sold that many books." And like I'm only CC'd on those emails, which is it's just so freaking refreshing to be like, look at these folks just
Your plan
like,
is
nerding
working.
out. Yeah, and they're nerding out and having a good time, and they're making friendships and like all that stuff, and I'm and I'm just there to support,
Sit back like Mr. Burns and say, "Dance, puppets, dance."
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
Not
David.
necessarily that maniacal though.
Well, David said something like that in the group text. He said something like, "Mark's evil plan to sell our comics is working."
Talking about plans, do you have maybe like a personal stretch goal for 2023? Something that you want to accomplish, for yourself or for lesser known?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't. I don't think I have one that's like formulated, like it completely. But what I am working on, January coming up, and that being like the time for New Year's resolutions and those kind of things, and take inventory of what's gone right and what's gone wrong with lesser known comics. It'd be lying like anything else if they said there was no setbacks. And I'm going to go over kind of like a review of 2022 and 2021 as well, and say, hey, this is how I see it, and this is how we're going to do 2023, and then solicit feedback from the other creators. But I'm also inviting other creators that don't publish with lesser known comics to come in and poke holes at our plan, or in some cases, if they look at our plan and say, hey, that's good, I want to be part of that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to publish through lesser known comics. There's other ways to collaborate, with them, like Dan Price. I would love for him to. I would love for Bigfoot Knows Karate to come to lesser known comics. But I told Dan multiple times, I was like, "You're doing fine on your own. You don't need me to take a cut of your work.
You don't need me to take your money."
So, but yeah, but they may see something that I don't, and they will most likely see a lot of things that I don't. so I'm excited to do that. And that'll be a fun collaborative exercise that we do. Because I would like to get to, um, as I'm talking through it, I think an ideal situation would be to have maybe a quarterly call that is an open forum where creators that are not lesser known comics or lesser known comics affiliated can come in, can hear what our plans are, and either take some of those good ideas and implement them on their own, or volunteer to come be a part of it, in whatever way that they think they can. And I think showing maybe some of that transparency would probably go a long way in building some more relationships in the indie comic scene.
A couple more questions before we wind this thing down. You have a lot going on: a wife, a life, day job, coming back from overseas, lesser known comics blowing up. Do you ever feel like you're stretched too thin?
Yeah, I do. uh, I think it's you who said it. Just one pant leg at a time,
That's right.
right? And if I try and do 10 awesome things, I only get 2 awesome things done in a year. Then that's probably better, than trying to be measured. And I think I was on another interview, and somebody asked, hey, is lesser known comics going to become something bigger? It's at some point, and because I compare us a lot. I want to be that minor league AAA team where you can still get drunk and still play like 9 innings, good enough.
The Ricky Vaughn of the indie comics scene.
Yeah, and if the majors want to pick up our people, that's awesome. And I think that people within our group will see the 8 awesome things that we didn't get to and say, hey, Mark didn't have the time to do it, but I do, and if there's an awesome idea that I left on the table, and they want to take it and run with it, I'll be the first one to cheer up, because if it's an awesome idea, somebody should do it. If I can't do it, why not you? And I think that's most likely, the way that I'll stop feeling stretched too thin, where I'm like, hey, this guy or gal's got it. They're going to carry it forward, and I can just be a supporting role in it.
So it's just kind of like knowing when to say no, or knowing when to say, let somebody else take the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Apollo City with the anthology. I want to do an anthology for over a year. Now they beat me to it, and I'm supporting it any way I can. So now I don't have to do it, right? I wanted to do another anthology with Comics Wellspring, and they introduced me to a guy named Eli, and he's done anthologies in the past, and they're freaking rad. And I was like, well, rather than me do it, why don't I provide you some resources, and you can do it, because you're the one who's got the expertise and the bandwidth.
Last question for you here, so we can have everybody can have their day back. What's the last comic you read?
So I'll do a couple shout outs. So I got this. So Bahati by Mad Cloud. This is one of the most recent ones I read. They're brand new, and this is such I'm always astounded that anybody can make an indie comic, because I know how much work goes into just make one comic, and I think they're up to 4 or 5, and he's only been doing it about a year. So I've been blown away by this. And then I just have to show off this cover. I have to take it out for the glare. This is from Tardigrade Press. This is Sasquatch Viking. This is the first one, but this is a custom variant cover by a guy by the name Liam Jones. And I was just blown away by this cover. The interior is amazing too. But These guys are up in Canada, up in the Toronto area. They're doing great work. So new comics, it's always indie stuff, and then I'm on my endless quest to get through X-Men chronological order. It just started the Claremont run, so I think the next issue I have in that is the first reveal of the Phoenix. You know, which is crazy to read. I know you're an X-Men animated series fan.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing now that some of the characters in the Claremont run, like the side characters, like Dr. Corbeau is a confidant of Charles Xavier in the comic, but it's the name of the astronaut that is piloting the space shuttle that they commandeer in the animated series. So it's like a small little Easter egg. They like reuse that name, like, and I'm like, that's
cool.
Because you can't cram it all into an animated series.
No, of course not. But guys, that's it for our final round of Launchtoberfest 2022. Guys, check back with us next year for Launchtoberfest 2023, round 2. Guys, wherever you are, stand up and clap. Mr. Mark Bernal. As always, if you learned anything on this show, it was by accident. Check out Kickstarter.com, either them or us. Back to freaking book, y'all. I've been your host, Josh Jones, and from Mark Bernal. This has been another wonderful episode of Epic Nerd Time. Check us out on YouTube and wherever you can find your podcasts. Later, babes.